Princess Anna never thought she would see her beautiful palace turn into a war zone. The golden throne room where she had learned to walk as a little girl was now shaking like a leaf in a storm. Outside her heavy wooden doors, she could hear her guards shouting and running around. The enemy soldiers had broken through the main gates. The young princess was only 28 years old, but she felt much older today. Her father, the king, had passed away just this morning. Before he closed his eyes for the last time, he had given her the royal ring and whispered, "Take care of our people, my daughter." Now she was holding that ring tight in her hand, wondering if she would live to see another sunrise. The sound of explosions was getting closer and closer. Each boom made the ancient walls shake, and dust fell from the ceiling like snow. Anna pressed her back against the cold marble pillar behind her golden throne. She had been sitting on this throne for royal meetings since she was 16, but today it felt more like a hiding place than a seat of power. Through the colorful glass windows, she could see flashes of light in the palace garden. Her loyal guards were fighting hard, but there were so many enemy soldiers. Anna counted at least 50 rebels in the courtyard, while her guards were only 5 or 6 men. It looked impossible, but her brave soldiers kept fighting anyway. The rebels had been angry with the royal family for 2 long years. They said the princess and her father cared more about fancy parties than helping poor people. Anna knew this wasn't true. She had been secretly sending money to hospitals and schools. She had been giving food to hungry families. But somehow, the rebels never heard about these good things she was doing. Anna looked around her throne room one more time. The walls were covered with paintings of her grandparents and great-grandparents. All of them had been good rulers who loved their people. The room smelled like roses from the garden and old books from the royal library next door. This place had been her safe space since childhood, but now it felt like a prison. She could hear footsteps in the hallway outside, heavy boots on marble floors. The sounds were getting closer. Anna's heart was beating so fast she thought it might jump out of her chest. She had never been this scared in her whole life, not even when she was a little girl afraid of thunderstorms. Suddenly, she heard a voice she recognized. It was Captain Rodriguez, her head guard since she was 15 years old. He was calling her name, but his voice sounded weak and painful. Anna wanted to open the doors and help him, but she knew it might be a trap. The rebels were very smart, and they might be forcing him to call her. "Princess Anna, stay inside," Captain Rodriguez shouted through the thick doors. "Don't open these doors no matter what happens. The palace is not safe anymore. Too many enemy soldiers everywhere." Anna felt tears coming to her eyes. Captain Rodriguez had taught her how to ride horses and how to be brave during difficult times. Now he was hurt and probably dying, but he was still trying to protect her. She wanted to be brave like him, but she was just so scared. The explosions outside were getting louder. Anna could see orange light dancing on the walls from fires in the garden. The smell of smoke was starting to come through the windows. She realized the rebels were not just trying to capture the palace. They were trying to destroy it completely. Then she saw something strange through the window. One soldier in the courtyard was moving differently from the others. While the other rebels were shouting and running around wildly, this one was moving carefully and quietly. He kept looking up at the throne room windows as if he was thinking about something important. This soldier looked young, maybe around her age. He had dark hair and was wearing the same uniform as the other rebels, but something about him seemed different. Anna couldn't explain why, but she felt like this soldier didn't want to hurt anyone. Maybe he was just following orders like everyone else. More explosions shook the palace. Anna could hear the sound of breaking glass from other rooms. Paintings were probably falling off walls. Furniture was probably getting smashed. This beautiful palace that had been her family's home for 300 years was being destroyed piece by piece. Anna looked at her father's ring again. It had a small blue stone that sparkled even in the dim light. Her father had worn this ring every day for 30 years. Now it was her responsibility to wear it and take care of the kingdom. But how could she take care of anyone if she was trapped in this room? She closed her eyes and tried to remember her father's last words. Take care of our people. But which people? The rebels outside were also her people, even though they were trying to hurt her. Maybe they were just confused and angry. Maybe if she could talk to them, she could explain that she really did care about everyone in the kingdom. The sound of fighting was getting closer to the throne room. Anna could hear swords hitting swords and men shouting orders. She knew her guards were brave, but they couldn't hold off so many enemies for much longer. Soon, the rebels would break through these doors, and then what would happen to her? Anna stood up from behind the pillar and walked to her throne. If she was going to face her enemies, she would do it like a real princess. She would do it with dignity and courage, just like her father had taught her. She sat on the golden throne and waited for whatever was going to happen next. Sergeant David Kim had one simple job: find Princess Anna and bring her to the rebel leaders alive. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. For 2 years, his commanders had told him the same story over and over again. The princess was evil. She lived in luxury while people starved on the streets. She spent money on jewels while children had no shoes to wear. David believed every word. Why wouldn't he? His own little sister had died from a disease that could have been cured if they had money for medicine. His parents lost their small farm because they couldn't pay the royal taxes. The princess had everything, and his family had nothing. It seemed so unfair. Now, as David walked through the marble hallways of the royal palace, he expected to see proof of the princess's greed everywhere. Gold statues, expensive paintings, rooms full of unnecessary luxury items. He was ready to feel angry when he saw how she wasted money while regular people suffered. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. The first room David entered was supposed to be a storage room for the princess's personal treasures. Instead, he found boxes and boxes of medical supplies. Not just a few items, but hundreds of bandages, bottles of medicine, and packages of food. Each box had a note written in beautiful handwriting. David picked up one of the notes and read it slowly. For the Children's Hospital in the East District, please make sure the sick babies get the milk first. Princess Anna, David stared at the note for a long moment. This didn't match what his commanders had told him. He opened another box and found more medicine with another note. For the old people's home on Maple Street. The winter is coming and they need warm blankets and cough medicine. Princess Anna. David's hands were shaking as he read note after note. Every single box was meant for poor people, sick people, or hungry families. There were toys for orphan children, warm clothes for homeless people, and enough food to feed a small town. All of it was paid for by the princess herself. David left the room feeling confused and walked down another hallway. Maybe these boxes were just for show. Maybe the princess knew rebels might attack, so she prepared fake evidence to make herself look good. That had to be it. The next room David entered was the princess's private office. Her desk was covered with letters and papers. David started reading them, expecting to find bills for expensive jewelry or invitations to fancy parties. Instead, he found letters from school teachers thanking the princess for new books. Letters from doctors thanking her for new hospital equipment. Letters from mothers thanking her for food that kept their children from going hungry. One letter made David stop breathing for a moment. It was from the doctor who had tried to save his little sister. The letter was thanking Princess Anna for sending money to buy medicine for poor families. The date on the letter was from 3 years ago, right around the time his sister got sick. David sat down in the princess's chair and put his head in his hands. Could it be possible? Had the princess actually tried to help his family and they never knew about it? Had she been secretly helping people all along? He opened the desk drawers and found more evidence. Bank records showing thousands of dollars sent to hospitals and schools every month. Personal letters from the princess to government officials, asking them to lower taxes for poor families. Plans for new housing projects for homeless people. Everything was signed with her own name and paid for with her own money. David felt sick to his stomach. For 2 years he had hated this woman. He had trained with weapons, learned to fight, and joined the rebellion because he wanted to punish her for being selfish and cruel. But now he was sitting in her office, surrounded by proof that she had been trying to help people like him all along. The sound of explosions brought David back to reality. The battle was still going on outside, and he still had a job to do. But now he didn't know what was right anymore. Should he capture the princess and hand her over to rebels who might hurt her? Or should he try to protect someone who had been secretly protecting others? David stood up and walked toward the throne room. He could hear voices through the thick wooden doors. Someone was crying softly, and someone else was speaking in a gentle, caring voice. David pressed his ear against the door and listened carefully. "It's going to be okay, Captain Rodriguez," a woman's voice was saying. "Help is coming, just keep breathing, you're going to be fine." David realized the princess was inside, taking care of someone who was hurt. She wasn't hiding and crying like a scared little rich girl. She was helping an injured person, even though the palace was under attack and she was in terrible danger herself. Through a crack in the door, David could see Princess Anna kneeling next to an older man in a guard uniform. The man was bleeding from his arm and the princess was using pieces of her own dress to bandage his wound. Her beautiful gown was getting stained with blood, but she didn't seem to care. "Princess, you need to hide," the injured guard was saying. "The rebels are coming, they want to hurt you." "I'm not leaving you, Captain," Princess Anna replied firmly. "You've protected me my whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you." David watched through the crack as the princess gently helped the wounded guard drink some water. Her hands were shaking and he could see that she was scared, but she was still putting someone else's needs before her own safety. At that moment, David realized he had been completely wrong about Princess Anna. She wasn't the evil, selfish person his commanders had described. She was kind, brave, and caring. She had been helping people in secret because she didn't want credit or praise. She just wanted to make life better for everyone in her kingdom. But now David had a terrible problem. The other rebels were still attacking the palace. They still believed the princess was their enemy. And worst of all, the building was starting to shake and crack from all the explosions. Soon parts of the palace might start falling down. David looked at his watch and realized he was running out of time. He had to make a choice right now. Follow his original orders and capture the princess, or find a way to save the woman who had been secretly saving others. David had never faced such an impossible choice in his entire life. His heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. Through the crack in the throne room door, he could still see Princess Anna taking care of the wounded guard. She was humming a soft song to keep him calm, just like a mother would do for a scared child. But then David heard something that made his blood turn cold. The ceiling above him was making strange cracking sounds. Small pieces of plaster were falling, like rain. The palace was 300 years old and all these explosions were making it shake apart. David looked up and saw a long crack running across the ceiling right above the throne room. This was very bad. Very, very bad. David had grown up helping his father build houses, so he knew about old buildings. When cracks appeared in ceilings, during earthquakes or storms, it meant the whole structure was becoming unstable. The throne room had thick stone walls and a heavy roof. If that ceiling came down, it would crush everything underneath it. Princess Anna had no idea she was sitting in a death trap. David pressed his face against the door crack again. The princess was still kneeling next to Captain Rodriguez, gently, cleaning his wounds. She had no clue that tons of stone and wood might fall on her head at any moment. The thick wooden doors that were protecting her from the rebel soldiers were also trapping her inside what would soon become her grave. Another explosion shook the palace, this one much closer than before. David felt the floor vibrate under his feet. More cracks appeared in the ceiling, and bigger pieces of plaster started falling. One piece hit David on the shoulder, and he realized he was in danger too. But all he could think about was the woman inside that room who had spent years secretly helping people like him. David tried to push the heavy throne room doors, but they wouldn't move. These doors were built to keep enemies out during attacks. They were made of solid oak wood with iron bars across them. Even 5 strong men working together would have trouble breaking them down. David was just one person and time was running out fast. He looked around desperately for something to help him. Maybe he could find tools somewhere, or call for help. But then he heard voices coming down the hallway. Other rebel soldiers were getting closer. In a few minutes, they would find him here. They would ask why he hadn't captured the princess yet. They would want to break down the doors themselves and take her away. David knew what his fellow rebels would do to Princess Anna. They had talked about it many times during their meetings. They were angry and wanted revenge. They wouldn't listen if David tried to tell them the truth about her kindness. They would think he was lying, or that she had somehow tricked him. But even worse than the approaching soldiers was the sound coming from above. The ceiling was making louder and louder cracking noises. David could see that the main support beam was starting to bend. In just a few more minutes, maybe 5 or 10 at most, the whole ceiling would come crashing down. David felt tears in his eyes as he realized what he had to do. There was only one way to get those doors open fast enough to save Princess Anna's life. It was dangerous and crazy, but it was the only choice he had. David reached into his equipment bag and pulled out his last grenade. His hands were shaking as he held it. He had never used one of these things before, only practiced with fake ones during training. His commanders had given it to him for emergencies, but this wasn't the kind of emergency they had in mind. David looked at the grenade, and then at the thick wooden doors. If he threw it at just the right spot, it might blow the doors open without hurting the people inside. But if he made a mistake, if he threw it wrong, or if it was too powerful, he might accidentally hurt the very person he was trying to save. The voices in the hallway were getting closer. David could hear boots on marble floors and men calling out orders. The ceiling made another loud crack, and a big chunk of plaster fell right where David had been standing a moment before. There was no more time to think. David pulled the pin from the grenade, just like they had taught him in training. He had only a few seconds before it would explode. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He aimed carefully at the strongest part of the doors, where the iron bars were connected to the wood. "Please let this work," David whispered to himself. "Please don't let me hurt her." David threw the grenade and immediately ran backward down the hallway as fast as he could. He covered his ears and opened his mouth just like his training instructor had taught him. The explosion was louder than anything he had ever heard. The whole palace seemed to shake like it was in an earthquake. When the smoke cleared, David saw that the throne room doors were completely destroyed. Pieces of wood and iron were scattered everywhere. But he also saw something that made his heart stop. The explosion had been stronger than he expected. It hadn't just broken the doors. It had also damaged the already weak ceiling above the throne room. As David watched in horror, the cracked ceiling beam finally gave way. Tons of stone, wood, and plaster came crashing down into the throne room like a waterfall. The sound was terrible, like thunder and breaking glass mixed together. Dust filled the air so thick that David couldn't see anything. When everything finally stopped falling and the dust began to settle, David stared at the pile of rubble that had been the beautiful throne room. Somewhere underneath all that stone and wood was Princess Anna, the woman who had secretly helped his family and thousands of others, the woman he had been trying to save. David fell to his knees and started crying. He had tried to rescue her, but instead he had made everything worse. His desperate attempt to save her life had ended up burying her alive. Princess Anna opened her eyes to complete darkness. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was or what had happened. Her head was pounding like someone was hitting it with a hammer. Every part of her body hurt, from her fingers to her toes. She tried to move, but something heavy was pressing down on her back. Slowly, the memories came back. The explosion. The terrible sound of the ceiling falling down. Captain Rodriguez had been lying next to her when everything went black. Anna tried to call his name, but her voice came out as just a whisper. Her throat was so dry and full of dust that she could barely make any sound at all. Anna reached out with her hands, trying to feel what was around her. Her fingers touched cold stone, broken wood, and pieces of what used to be her beautiful throne room. She was trapped in a small space, like being inside a cave made of broken building pieces. The air smelled like dust and smoke, and every breath made her cough. But Anna was alive. Somehow, when the ceiling fell down, the pieces had fallen in a way that created a tiny, safe space around her. It was like a miracle. She was hurt and scared, but she was breathing and she could move her arms and legs. That meant she had a chance to get out of this mess. Anna had always been a strong person, even as a little girl. When other children were afraid to climb trees, she would climb to the very top. When her horse threw her off during riding lessons, she got right back on. Her father used to say she had the heart of a warrior, just like her great-grandmother who had defended the kingdom against invaders 200 years ago. Now Anna needed that warrior heart more than ever. She started moving very slowly and carefully through the dark space. Every few inches she had to stop and feel around with her hands to find the safest path. Sharp pieces of broken stone cut her fingers and tore holes in her dress. Her beautiful gown, which had taken 3 seamstresses a month to make, was now just torn rags covered in dirt and blood. But Anna didn't care about her dress. All she cared about was finding a way out and getting help for Captain Rodriguez and anyone else who might be hurt. She had been trained since childhood to think about others before herself. That's what good rulers do. They protect their people, even when they're in danger themselves. As Anna crawled through the rubble, she started to hear voices somewhere in the distance. At first she thought it might be her imagination. When people are trapped and scared, sometimes their minds play tricks on them. But the voices got clearer as she moved toward them. "Help me," someone was saying in a weak, painful voice. "Please, somebody help me." Anna's heart jumped. Someone else was alive in this pile of broken stone and wood. She wasn't alone. Anna started crawling faster toward the voice, even though it made her cuts and bruises hurt worse. She had to find this person and help them, just like Captain Rodriguez had always helped her. The space between the fallen pieces was sometimes so narrow that Anna had to squeeze through on her belly like a snake. Other times, she had to climb over big chunks of marble that used to be part of the throne room walls. Her hands were bleeding now and she could taste blood in her mouth, but she kept going. Anna had been crawling for what felt like hours. When she finally saw a tiny bit of light coming through a crack in the rubble. It wasn't much light, just enough to see shadows and shapes, but it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Light meant there was a way out. Light meant hope. She squeezed through the crack and found herself in a slightly bigger space. And there, trapped under a fallen wooden beam, was a young man in a rebel soldier uniform. His leg was pinned, and he looked like he was in terrible pain. But Anna recognized his face immediately. This was the soldier she had seen in the courtyard, the one who moved differently from the others. The soldier's eyes went wide when he saw her crawling toward him through the rubble. He probably expected her to be angry or scared of him. After all, he was wearing the uniform of her enemies. But Anna felt something completely different. She felt grateful. "You're the one who threw the grenade," Anna said softly. Her voice was still hoarse from all the dust, but she managed to smile. "You saved my life." The soldier looked confused and maybe a little afraid. "Princess, I didn't mean for the ceiling to fall. I was trying to help you escape, but I made everything worse." Anna shook her head and moved closer to him. "You didn't make anything worse. If you hadn't blown open those doors, I would have been sitting right under the biggest part of the ceiling when it fell. I would be dead right now." She could see tears in the soldier's eyes. "But you're hurt because of me. You're trapped down here because of what I did." "We're both trapped," Anna said gently. "But we're both alive. And now we can help each other get out of here." Anna looked at the wooden beam that was pinning the soldier's leg. It was heavy, but she thought maybe together they could move it. She had always been strong for a princess. All those years of horseback riding and sword practice with Captain Rodriguez had made her stronger than most people expected. But first she wanted to know something about this young man who had risked everything to save her. "What's your name?" Anna asked. "David," the soldier replied quietly. "David Kim." "Well, David Kim," Anna said. "Thank you for saving my life. Now let's figure out how to save both of us." As Anna started examining the beam that trapped David's leg, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Yes, they were buried under tons of rubble. Yes, they were both hurt and scared. But they were alive and they were not giving up. Anna had spent her whole life learning how to be a good leader. She had studied history, politics, and economics. But none of her teachers had ever taught her the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best way to lead is to crawl through the darkness to help someone who needs you, even if that someone used to be your enemy. Princess Anna, daughter of kings, covered in dirt and blood, began working. to free the rebel soldier who had saved her life. David thought he was going to die when he saw the dusty, bloodied figure crawling toward him through the rubble. He had failed his mission completely. He had joined the rebellion to capture Princess Anna, but instead he had probably hurt her with his grenade. Now she was going to be angry with him, and he was trapped with no way to escape or defend himself. But when Princess Anna reached him, the first words out of her mouth were not angry words or accusations. Instead, she looked him straight in the eyes and said something that changed his whole world. "Thank you for saving my life." David couldn't believe what he was hearing. This woman who should hate him, who had every right to be furious with him, was thanking him. She was covered in cuts and bruises because of his actions, but she was grateful instead of angry. "Princess, you don't understand," David said, his voice shaking. "I came here to capture you. I was part of the group trying to hurt you. You shouldn't be thanking me." Anna smiled, even though David could see she was in pain. "I know exactly who you are and why you came here. But I also know that you chose to save me instead of following your orders. That's what matters." As Anna began working to free David's trapped leg, he started telling her his story. He told her about his little sister who died because his family couldn't afford medicine. He told her about losing their farm because of high taxes. He told her how the rebel leaders had convinced him that she was cruel and selfish. "But then, I walked through your palace," David continued, wincing as Anna tried to move the heavy beam. "I saw all those boxes of medicine you were sending to hospitals. I read the letters from families thanking you for help. I realized everything I believed about you was wrong." Anna paused in her work and looked at David with sad eyes. "I tried to help people quietly without making a big show of it. But maybe that was a mistake. Maybe if I had told everyone what I was doing, people like you would have known the truth." Together they managed to shift the wooden beam just enough for David to pull his leg free. It was badly bruised and probably sprained, but not broken. David could walk, though it would be painful. Now they had to find a way out of the collapsed throne room. Anna led the way, crawling through small spaces and climbing over chunks of marble. David followed, amazed by how brave and determined she was. This was not the spoiled, weak princess he had imagined. This was a strong, caring person who was risking her safety to help him escape. As they crawled through the darkness, they talked about the war that had torn their country apart. Anna learned how the rebel leaders had spread false stories about her, making good people believe she was their enemy. David learned about all the ways Anna had tried to help citizens, even when her own advisors told her not to waste money on poor people. "The sad thing is," Anna said as they squeezed through a narrow gap between fallen stones, "we both want the same things. We both want people to have enough food, good medicine, and safe places to live. We just didn't know we were on the same side." After hours of crawling and climbing, they finally saw real daylight coming through a hole in the rubble. They were going to make it out alive. David helped Anna climb through the opening first, then pulled himself out after her. When they emerged from the destroyed throne room, they found a crowd of people waiting. Rescue workers, palace guards, and even some rebel soldiers were all working together to look for survivors. The fighting had stopped when word spread that people were trapped under the collapsed building. The sight of Princess Anna and the rebel soldier climbing out of the rubble together, both hurt, but helping each other walk, made everyone stop and stare. Here was the princess they thought was hiding in fear, and here was a rebel who had chosen to save her instead of capture her. Anna raised her voice so everyone could hear her, even though she was tired and hurt. "This brave soldier risked his life to save mine. The war between us needs to end. We've all been fighting each other when we should have been working together." David stood next to Anna, still not quite believing this was really happening. "Princess Anna has been helping our people all along," he announced to the crowd. "We were wrong about her. She's been sending medicine to our sick children and food to our hungry families. She's not our enemy." Over the next few days, as Anna and David recovered from their injuries, they worked together to bring peace between the royal forces and the rebels. Anna admitted that she should have been more open about her charity work, so people would know she cared about them. The rebel leaders admitted they had been wrong to spread false stories about her. The image of the princess and the rebel soldier Supporting each other as they walked away from the destroyed throne room became famous throughout the kingdom. People painted pictures of it, wrote songs about it, and told the story to their children and grandchildren. David became the head of Anna's personal security team, dedicated to protecting the woman who had shown him what real leadership looked like. Anna rebuilt the throne room, but she added a special memorial stone marking the spot where she and David had been trapped together. The inscription on the stone read, "Here enemies became friends, and friendship brought peace." Years later, when Princess Anna became Queen Anna and married a kind farmer's son she had met while visiting a rural hospital, David was the one who walked her down the aisle. The little rebel soldier who had once planned to capture her had become like a brother to her. The story of their meeting became a legend that parents told their children for generations. It proved that sometimes the most wonderful friendships can begin in the darkest moments, and that saying thank you to someone who has hurt you can be more powerful than any weapon. Queen Anna ruled for 40 happy years, always remembering the lesson she learned while crawling through rubble. The best way to lead people is to crawl through darkness to help them, no matter who they are or where they come from.